Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. So one thing that I want to talk about before we even start getting into the talk is the title, because Polkadot really does evolve. So any changes made to the network are not the decision of one person, but rather they always have to be voted on by all of the dot holders. And so we actually see a lot of discussion on how things change. So as I put this up here about what we're planning to do, I do want to note that this is not like the founders of Polkadot somewhere in a cigar smoke-filled room deciding what's happening for the future, but rather what the community has voted on and will continue to vote on, and on how the network changes. So before we talk about what's going to occur, I want to just spend a few minutes discussing the basics of Polkadot, what it is, how it differs from other blockchains. Essentially, Polkadot is not a blockchain. Polkadot is a whole set of blockchains. As of yesterday, I just double checked, there are 45 we call parachains. They are essentially a type of roll-up on the Polkadot central relay chain. So, and obviously that number can increase. So while currently we have 45, there is plenty of room for more if you're interested in building on Polkadot. So the idea is not that, again, we have a single blockchain, but rather there are lots and lots of different blockchains that are compatible with each other. So these are not like Ethereum L2s where they can't always interact with each other, but we have standards on how to move assets from one chain to another. Smart contracts can call from one chain to another, etc. A very cool thing about Polkadot, what actually got me into Polkadot in the first place, is the ability to build your own blockchain, right? So we have had the Polkadot SDK. You may have heard it referred to as Substrate as well, but that's actually just one part of the Polkadot SDK, software development kit. You can make a blockchain that does what you want to do, and then connect it to Polkadot, get all of the security, all of the interoperability, but you have a blockchain. If you want to add features to it, it's as easy as adding different what we call palettes. These are like libraries. So if you want staking, you can add a staking palette. If you want democracy, you add a democracy palette. If you want IDs, you add an ID palette. And there are hundreds of these palettes available. So you can mix and match your own blockchain or code your own palette for specific functionality. So last slide of just, what Polkadot is now. So what we talk about, and I stole this slide from Sean Tabrizi, so thank you, Sean, for this, is if you think of Bitcoin as a calculator, like a world calculator, that we can assume like this person has this Bitcoin, this person has this Bitcoin, Ethereum created a computer, and then Polkadot is a whole cloud server. So you have lots of these different computers, lots of these different blockchains, but all interacting with each other. Okay, so like my very quick 3-minute overview of what Polkadot is before we now talk about, or what are the challenges, how can we improve, and then we'll talk about what the evolution is. So there are some challenges. Not every project needs its own chain. If you are going to create some very small, tiny little project, it may not make a lot of sense to do the extra work involved in making a chain. Anytime you cross chains, anytime you have one chain talking to another, there is also there's a slight delay in communications, and so this also means that you may not want to do this. You may want to interact with other things, other contracts that are on the same chain. Developing a chain is more difficult than just writing a smart contract. People don't think about it, but because smart contracts are so unforgiving, but you actually do have a lot of guardrails in place, right? If you think of standard Ethereum, Solidity, smart contract development, you don't have to worry you're going to get into an infinite loop and brick the chain. Why? Because you'll run out of gas eventually, right? You'll have to pay too many fees, eventually it will end. This is something you have to worry about when you're developing your own blockchain, right? That you think about all of this stuff ahead of time. So because of that, there's a lot more time involved in building your own blockchain. It's a lot more commitment. It's a little bit more difficult to just say, hey, I'm going to try like some quick hack here and then develop something. chains require their own infrastructure. So you need to make sure that you have someone that's indexing your blocks. You have a block explorer, that you have your what we call collator, what others may call sequencer nodes, how it interact with the main chain. So there's a lot of extra work involved if you want to use the Polkadot SDK to build something on Polkadot. And finally, there's no canonical chain for smart contracts. So we have several chains in the Polkadot ecosystem, such as Moonbeam or Akala, A-Star, that support smart contracts. But if someone were to ask me, okay, I want to build a smart contract on Polkadot, I have to tell them, okay, well, which one of these chains do you want to build on? And what are the benefits and drawbacks? It's a more complicated process. There's no canonical chain for smart contracts. So because of this, the community has decided that we are going to solve some of these problems by moving to a concept we're calling hub and cloud. So the idea here is to build upon the strengths of what Polkadot already has, while also providing different and new capabilities for those that this is a drawback to, and as well as make it easier for people who are building to actually build on Polkadot. So this is our main goal, right? We want to make it easier for builders. So the big change that we are adding is Polkadot Hub. So there already is a parachain, one of these roll-ups on Polkadot called the Asset Hub. And that allows anyone to create assets. Assets would be ERC20 style fungible tokens or NFTs. And then you can then have one central place for assets on the Polkadot ecosystem. So what we're going to do is add some capabilities to this. And probably the most obvious, the most user-facing capability is the ability for EVM smart contracts. Right? So you actually, on top of this asset hub, you can build, just take your Solidity code, or I guess technically your Viper code if anyone's using Viper, or other EVM compatible languages, and run it directly on this asset hub, what we're calling the Polkadot hub. We're actually creating something new called the Polka VM. So even though it will be EVM compatible, it's actually much stronger, much more efficient, and much more flexible. So that you can not just use EVM, but rather using Polka VM, you also could build other virtual machines and run them on the same chain. So we've actually seen this in some other experimental systems where you've had different virtual machines running on the same parachain and then interacting with each other. So again, to start with, we're just going to have an Ethereum virtual machine on there, but in the future, we could have Move VM, Solana VM, etc. All of these are capable of running then in the same chain. And remember, I said there's always going to be a bit of a delay, right? There's always a little bit more complexity and a little bit of time when you are going from chain A to chain B. And so if we have one canonical chain for smart contracts, and then you have different types of VMs, and all these smart contracts can interact with each other, you can imagine this provides a lot of different capabilities for builders in the ecosystem. Block times, once we have everything implemented using something called elastic scaling, I'll get into in a moment, we should have 2-second block times, finalization in about 12 seconds, maybe a bit less, maybe less than that going forward. And another thing, what I think the big benefit, why build in the Polkadot ecosystem, is you still have this capability to interact with other chains. So we have, again, 45 different chains, some of which are their own smart contract chains, some of which are app chains. So we have, for instance, several social media chains like Frequency and Subsocial. We have a prediction market chain. We have a core time chain for buying core. We have basically buying the ability to work on Polkadot. We have a people chain for identities. We have Kilt for decentralized identities. We have all these different chains that have different usage that you can call via a superset of the EVMs, some additional opcodes, to interact with other chains in the ecosystem from your smart contract. So we're trying to make it much easier for users and for builders to build on Polkadot and use the capabilities of what's out there. So all of that is out there now. Chain A can talk to chain B, but it's more difficult. We're making it easier. Finally, a thing I think is really cool is that transaction fees can be paid for by essentially any approved token. So you wouldn't have to use, if you want to make, I want to make a bill application. I'm going to make sure that you pay Billcoin to use it. I'm not also going to need DOT to use it. I could just pay directly with Billcoins. And behind the scenes, this works basically as a built-in DEX. So you can just use whatever token you want for interacting with the chain itself. Behind the scenes, it will still use DOT, but from the user perspective, they can use whatever token they want. So if you want to transfer stable coins and pay the fees in stable coins, you can do that. If you want to use something that's specific for your application, you can use that, and the user won't actually have to get DOT, the native token. So I think a lot of cool things here that allow sort of the benefits of traditional Solidity development and the ease of use and the tooling, the infrastructure, all of that stuff is still capable, but you get a lot of the benefits with Polkadot, but in a nice, easy wrapper that you're already used to if you've done any Solidity development. So another thing that I think is going to be very cool is that we're moving more of the functionality from this relay chain, remember the central chain that supports all of the other chains and secures them. And traditionally, our goal for this has always been its job is just to secure parachains. And so on this Polkadot hub, we're moving some of the functionality that's on the relay chain now, like staking, on-chain governance, and we have an amazing governance system. 1.1 vote. Anything that's done in the ecosystem has to be voted on by the DOT holders. Any change to the code, any upgrade has to be approved by the DOT holders. That will also be moving to this hub. Account balances, so like DOT won't even live on the relay chain anymore. And because of this, because we're taking all of these features that the relay chain had to spend time and computational energy working on to a parachain, we actually are going to have the capability for even more parachains, and thus more things happening as part of Polkadot. So the second thing that we're doing, remember I said it's hub and cloud, is this traditional building your own blockchain and running it on Polkadot, which so we're calling this the cloud. So again, already you can do this. You can use the Polkadot SDK to build your own parachain, and then you'll program your own chain with its own rules from the ground up. If you want to have a feeless chain, if you want to use say every account gets 10 free transaction calls, you can do something like that. If you want to do an anti-MEV chain and say, build something in at the runtime to help prevent MEV, all of these things can be done by building your own runtime and thus your own parachain. And the other nice thing about going this direction is that other chains or applications will have no impact on your chain's throughput. So if you have your own chain, you don't have to worry that there's going to be some incredibly popular application that absolutely swamps even the very high capabilities of throughput of Polkadot that's going to interact or interfere with your chain. You don't have to worry about any rules changing. You are in charge of your own chain, but you still get the ability to be secured by Polkadot and interact with other chains in Polkadot. So very useful for app chains or L1s. And so something I do want to notice here, actually a bit of a side note, but our throughput really is second to none. We on Kusama, our Canary network, we reached it was approximately 144,000 transactions per second, and that was running at 23% capability. So we actually have this sharded model that we have that I'm happy to talk more about in depth in a less overview talk. Really provides some massive benefits in terms of transactions per second and scalability. So if you have looked at Polkadot in the past and said, hey, I want to build a chain, but there were some things that you may have found a little bit difficult. Again, we have been looking and seeing what are the problems and we want to fix them. Polkadot is not the same as it was when it launched in 2020. So if you're familiar with the parachain auction process, that's now been removed. We use something called core time. This went live in September. So you can onboard whenever you like. If you want to build a chain, you actually can onboard right now, like this, within 10 minutes, right? As soon as you issue all of the transactions. We have asynchronous backing now. So essentially this means that block times for the parachains have gone from 12 seconds to 6 seconds. Let me jump down to that last one. We actually now can use more cores on the relay chain to improve those times. So we have this being tested now on Kusama, our Canary network. However, it will be coming in the very near future to Polkadot, where you can use up to 3 what we call cores, basically computational units on the relay chain, to either increase the size of your blocks on your parachain, or to decrease the time of those blocks. So using 3, you can very easily get down to 2-second blocks, again, once elastic scaling goes live. So this is going to be very awesome, right? Finalization, total finalization within 6 to 12 seconds, and 2-second block times for parachains. So this is the big difference that's coming, Polkadot Hub and Cloud. There are lots of other smaller things coming in terms of ensuring that we have a stable API, address standardization, so ensuring that chains across the network all use the same address type. We already have key pair standardization, so if you have an account on one parachain, you can use it on essentially any parachain. But we just want to make sure that the visibility of that to the end user is always the same. Just another little user-facing nice thing to do to make things easier to understand, because it was a point of confusion. My name again, Bill Laboon, at Bill Laboon on Twitter, or if you just Google my name, there's not many Laboons out there. Please, feel free to get in contact with me, or we have a few minutes left if you don't mind if I take some questions.
Thanks, Bill. Yeah, I think we have time for questions.
All right, thank you.
So,
Test. Go.
Any question? Together, yeah.
Oh. Now we have very great infrastructure, which gets better and better. How can we get the users on Polkadot to actually use it?
Yeah, always a question, right? So in case people didn't hear it, like how do we get the users? And I think that's a question like we're all asking ourselves, right? And no matter what chain we're on, we always want more users. So I can say some of the things we're doing at Web3 Foundation, we see it as sort of as twofold, right? We need to make it easier for builders to build, which is what really I've discussed here. We at Web3 Foundation aren't going to be able to build the thing. That's just not our mandate, right? To directly build these things that the end users are using. We make it easier for others to use, and we try to get more people onboarded. And so the second thing is getting money for these teams to build. And we do that in a couple of different ways. So first, we have a traditional grants program. We actually gave out, I forget the exact numbers, but it says 20 million plus 5 million $20 million US dollars plus $5 million to different builders in the ecosystem last year. Our grants program continues, working with investors to make sure that they're aware of Polkadot and to convince them that they should support projects built on Polkadot. The final thing is education. So a big thing is both in terms of like, all right, how do we teach builders how to use things, but also how to teach people, all right, why is this important? What are the benefits of blockchain? Right, and so this is something that I do quite often. Like even reaching out to lots of different industries. I'm going to Argentina to discuss this. Going to New York. I'm going. I even give a lot of talks at schools in Switzerland to get people to understand not just, okay, here's how Solidity code works. Here's what a re-entrancy attack is. But okay, what's the benefits of decentralization? What's the benefits of having this data verifiable? Right, and showing. So I think our job here for most of us is, it's like that old saying. It's like don't people to build a ship, teach them to yearn for the boundless sea. Right. So we're showing them, all right, what is the benefit of this, and why should you want to build on it? Like again, in my 30-second discussion of what we're doing to build, I think that's the best answers.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. There was another question.
Yeah, in the back there.
Just throw it.
Cool. Thanks. I mean, partly it was actually like a related question because, I have a project on basically any EVM compatible chain, and like I was wondering, like, is there something about the user experience that you would say is an argument why, for example, I should switch to Polkadot? Is there actually a reason, or is there not like the function that you have that like to specifically develop like more end user usability from your perspective? Is there something coming up? And then partly the second question, I guess you're probably a little bit familiar with Story Protocol, and they moved to like build actually an L1. Is that a use case where you say actually it would have been much easier for them to build in the Polkadot ecosystem because they could have their own chain? Is that a use case where you say that's exactly what Polkadot is for?
Yes, I mean that's yeah. So to answer your second question first, like that's a very straightforward use case, is especially with this new system of hub and cloud. It's very easy. Like, all right, I've already developed this as a smart contract. Moving it to a chain becomes very easy, and you stay in the ecosystem. And that's one benefit of building on Polkadot. The second is if you're building on you want to build on EVM, but you want almost, and then perhaps in the future, very very close to Solana-like times. Right, so much faster user interaction, extreme decentralization. So the Nakamoto coefficient of Polkadot is 149. So if that's important to you, also something interesting. Depending on what you're building and the ability to interact with these other chains, if you want to have immediate access to other things that are already happening on Polkadot, and these other app chains, then not only can you just run it like a normal, right, like anything on Ethereum or any other EVM-based machine, but you then also have built in the ability to interact with these. But that's more on a case-by-case basis. So I see we're out of time, but
Thanks.
Again, just feel free, anyone, look up Bill Laboon, however you find me, LinkedIn, Twitter, Telegram. You'll probably find me. Feel free to ask me any questions. All right,
Thank you again, Bill.